coming back out here after. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for having the film. First and foremost, it is really important to us, particularly in this day and age, that we get to share our work in the way that it was intended to be seen and have a communal experience together watching it. It means a lot that you guys take the care, to show not just our film, but so many films here this week, to provide them with a good home, a beautiful theater, and for you guys to come out and support and share this with us. So thank you. And then thank you, of course, for this. I hope I'm still a young man, but been poking away at it for a while, and it really I've made my home in independent film. Strike right from the start when I was 16. So it means a lot to be acting, now to be writing and directing. It's a film about family. We've all got one, so I hope somebody out there is able to piece themselves somewhere in it. And we'll talk about it. So enjoy the film. Thank you.
Director, writer, producer, Paul Dano. You guys like that? So, this was your first film as a director. You've done a lot of films as an actor. What brought you to this material?
I was a fan of an author named Richard Ford. He's a great American writer. I was looking for another book of his to read. I went to my local bookstore, pulled off the shelf Wildlife, read the first sentence, the first paragraph, which remains one of my favorites ever in any book still. So I was just immediately in as a reader. And then even 20 pages in, I was having a sort of uncanny personal experience reading this book. I loved the language, the characters, the time, the place, the sense of family, the American dream. But really, there were two things that grabbed me. One is that he somehow captured that family is some of the greatest love in our life. And also, and maybe because of that, sometimes one of the greatest sources of struggle, or whatever word you would use, pain or heartbreak or whatever. And the other thing that really grabbed me was this feeling of the mystery of who our parents are. And that felt sort of seductive to me. And I really wanted to know and understand Jerry and Jeanette even more when I closed the book. So I reread it and daydreamed about it and thought maybe it could be a film.
And how long did the process take from finding the book to actually shooting the book?
Well, a long time. I probably read the book in 2011, maybe 2012, and I daydreamed about it for about a year, just kind of rereading it, thinking about it, and not everything in a book might work in a film. So, and one thing that may not have worked was the ending of the book. And when I thought of the ending and the final shot of the film, that's when I felt, oh, I can do it. I can do it. Sort of, just enough. That I was like, okay, so I wrote to Richard Ford, optioned the book. So, Zoe and I wrote for several years, partially because we weren't paying our rent writing Wildlife. We didn't have we optioned it ourselves. We had nobody to answer to. It was sort of hours at home, and we'd go act in something and come back to it. And finally, at a certain point, you sort of have to put the pencil down and get on with it. So, and at that point, then we actually made pretty good time in actually making the film.
You've had a fantastic career, and you've worked with a lot of incredible directors. How did that influence what you wanted to do, or maybe what you didn't want to do with this one?
Yeah, I can't imagine anybody making a film without having had experience on set, because it was so vital to me to know how I wanted set to feel. It's been so important to me as an actor, sort of the temperature of the set, so to speak. When you step onto certain sets, there's a feeling, there's a level of care and attention, and so there were many things to sort of take on, my journey, so to speak, and most importantly, hard work, a level of care, making sure that the crew is a part of the film because everything goes into the camera, and seeing how different actors work. And so the technical stuff comes from just being a movie dork and studying it, and reading about it and watching it, but a lot of the spirit of making a film and making it the way you want to, I've taken from some great filmmakers I've worked with.
You have a tremendous cast in the film. And this is a two-part question. The most obvious question is, how did you attract so many great people? You have tons of material, but how did you get to everybody? Because it's never an easy task. The second part is really that a lot of first-time directors, especially coming as actors first, put themselves in their own films. And you chose not to do that. And so what made you make that decision?
Well, I first of all, I had so much to learn, and I was so excited to work with the camera and the image in general, and just with the design of the film and working with the actors. I had zero interest in acting in it, and I just can't imagine sitting in the edit room for 6 months looking at myself. I mean, really, that's, a lot to ask. I did have the advantage as a first-time filmmaker of having been an actor, and Carey Mulligan and Zoe Kazan did a play together about a decade ago and shared a dressing room. And it was actually through Carey that I met Jake for the first time before I worked with him as an actor, which I've worked with Jake twice. I called Carey and said, will you read this? And frankly, didn't say much beyond that because I think it's the kind of part that you can't have somebody doing you a favor. You need somebody who wants to be there. And luckily, she was all in from the first read. She called me back maybe 12 hours later and was like, in. And that was so exciting. And that was really the first big step towards really making the film. And then Jake, because I knew they sort of wanted to work together. And again, luckily he responded to the script. He had just started a production company as well, so they came on board. And I was very, very, very lucky to get them. And even equally lucky to have found our kid at Oxenbold, who we just couldn't make the film without him. He was the only kid we saw who could really fill in the space between the lines. Like his thoughts carried through the scene. He had sort of a window into him, and he was really the only kid for us. So that was, and we found him late in the casting process. So that was kind of a small miracle that we found him, who's Australian and lives in Sydney and just got a tape, in the email.
So we'll open this up for a couple of questions. I'll repeat them so everyone can hear. Anyone want to start? Over there, yes.
You said the book ended differently. How did the book end?
How did the book end?
Yeah, so the book is written in the first person, but looking back on the events. So first of all, it would be very tempting to use voiceover, which we really set out not to. We wanted to make the film present tense, but imbue a sense of memory, just sort of in the image. And then the end of the film, one big difference is that when he lights his house on fire, Warren Miller kind of lets him off the hook, and Jerry and Joe walk off together and sort of more okay. And Jeanette leaves, and then she comes back, and they sort of resume living together. But it's sort of done the way that prose can do, where time has moved, and there just wasn't a cinematic way to, and it didn't feel right to me. But it's a beautiful ending, the book, and the book is stunning. It's stunning. It's important to learn what the film is.
Here, yes.
Yeah, since the film was released, have you learned about any period details that you got wrong?
That was since the film was released. Are there any details that were 100% correct?
No, I don't know, but I can tell you there's a couple cheats. One, we made a period film on a budget, and we put a lot of care into getting it right, but also the most important thing is the feeling of it. There's a song on the radio that is not accurate to 1960. It is a couple years later. but you didn't know that. There's a movie on a marquee in the background that was probably in November of 1960.
Butterfield 8.
Yeah. But that shot was originally going to be used differently in the film. So, anyway.
Well, one thing I noticed in particular that I wasn't sure existed in 1960 was this road sign, the yellow sign that said road narrows, I think. I wasn't sure that they had those then.
They might not have.
They might not have in Montana. They probably didn't have as much yellow lines on the road as well in Montana. But there's only so much we can afford to do.
Right there.
Thanks, Paul, for being here. It was a great film. A lot of scenes were captivating, gripping. The one that stuck out to me the most was in the kitchen when Jerry essentially explains he wants to go and fight the fire. I'm just curious, how long did it take to get to that point where the performances were so raw and just powerful? Because it was one shot, you held on that. So obviously it was just one take. So I'm just curious, what was the dynamic? How long did it take to get there? Yeah.
Yeah, great. You did a good projection, yeah.
Also, did you go to that diner in Livingston at the bottom there with the spinning marquee?
Yes.
That was amazing.
It is very good. Yeah, and Livingston's a beautiful, special place. So, yes, the film is shot, I think, somewhat economically, and that was important, not only just for the visual storytelling, but it really allowed us to go to work on the day rather than trying to sort of get as many setups as possible. So I think that there were times where we did a lot of takes, and the shot that you're talking about is one of those times where it was really about letting them go to work. And I always have felt that, in a film, you only get to do each scene once. I personally prefer to do a lot of takes as an actor too, or not a lot, but just something because you only get to do it once, and let's just kind of leave it all out on the floor. And Carey and Jake, I wanted to give them a chance to, be their best selves. Not that they need it, but there were times where, because of light, time, the kid could only be on camera 5.5 hours a day. There were a lot of time constrictions, so it depended on the scene. But those kind of scenes we left a lot of room for to search, to mess around, and hopefully stumble upon something. The take that's in the film, they just messed up like right before, and then they just kind of exploded over each other, and that's exactly what you're hoping is going to happen.
Let's grab a couple more back there.
Yeah, this is a two-part question. First part is how did you get Oklahoma, which is almost like Montana, to be shot in Oklahoma? The other thing is, did you get any input from your before production or afterwards?
So 2 questions. How did you get Oklahoma to look like Montana, and did you get input from Richard Ford, the author, on the film?
We filmed 4 days in Montana because it's all we could afford. And we put those 4 days to good use. Oklahoma was wonderful to us, and we just found the right locations. So much of it is scouting and finding natural gold, so to speak, doing a period film on a budget. I think it works great, but that was a challenge for sure. And Richard Ford, I wrote him, and the first thing he said to me was, "My book is my book, and your picture is your picture, and you should establish your own values and goals." And basically gave us permission to go make our film inspired by the book, but not beholden to it. And that was such a beautiful bit of wisdom for somebody of his stature to give. We've kept in touch, we write, he has seen the film multiple times, he loves the film. We just got to do a talk last week at Lincoln Center, which was really fun. He's such a smart guy, and it's just so his use of language, even in person, is very